Hi guys, Kenny G here. Uh, Today we're going to do something a little different. We're going to be talking about mindfulness, and specifically, I've been taking some classes on mindfulness to help myself out. Uh, if you follow my channel, you know I've been suffering with serious pelvic pain that's made it near impossible to sit for extended periods. Even right now, it's difficult to sit. But I've been taking classes on mindfulness after recommendations from quite a few different sources to look into it. I've also purchased this book here, A Headache in the Pelvis, but that is a topic for another time. Today we're going to talk about mindfulness. And it's going to be a 5 or 6 part series about mindfulness. And I'm going to try to basically convey to you what the teacher conveyed to me. That way you're gaining this knowledge for free. And if you practice the techniques that I'm being taught, hopefully you'll find one that helps you. Not one thing that she taught us was that not all techniques will work for everyone. So over the course of 6 weeks, that's how long it's taking me to do the course. We're gonna do all sorts of different techniques, and it may be only one hits home for you, but the point is that if any of them hit home, that it'll help you. So they're all breathing techniques. They're all about breathing, and they're all about controlling, well, gaining control of yourself, right? And where should I go from here? Essentially, what she said is if you can gain control of your breath, become master of your breath, then you can become mindful. So it's a little confusing at the start, but once you start learning about it, you'll see it's actually not that complicated. And yeah, it's all about breathing. The whole course. I'm on week 3 right now when I'm filming this video. And the whole course is just about different breathing techniques and how your breath can affect your state of mind. How it's really interesting, actually, if you look into it. Like, for example, the different type of breaths you have when you're feeling different emotions. Like if you're angry, you have like a very deep like a type of breath, right? Or if you're panicky, you're like right? And those different breaths, like even just doing it there, I can feel the emotions, right? I can feel the emotions, and the emotions trigger things in your brain. So yeah, essentially that's the dealio. Is it's all about breathing. So each class opens with a question. I'm going to give you the question, and I'll give you my answer to the question. The question asks, what is the difference between personality and individuality? And I mean, you can pause the video if you want to think about it yourself. You might want to think about it yourself and, well, come up with your own answer before I give you the answer. Okay, guys, so I'm back. I had to deal with my cat. She decided to jump up on the table here. So the question is, what is the difference between personality and individuality? Well, in the class we discussed it quite a bit, but to simplify it down, personality is what you present to the world. It's as if there are many versions of you, right? There is the version of you you have when you go to work. There's the version of you you have when you interact with your friends. There's a version of you that maybe is when you're interacting with your family, and none of them are the whole you, right? They're essentially masks. They're personas, right? That's where the word personality comes from, is persona. And they're masks that you're wearing, right? And that's why well, sometimes you hurt, right? Is that you're not being the real you, and like 90% of the time you're not the real you, right? You're never in a state of being the real you. You're always having to be something else because of expectations people have pushed onto you, right? That you're not the real you. You're wearing a mask, which goes into what is individuality. Individuality is the you inside of you, right? The one that you know that maybe you're not presenting to the world, right? If you presented the whole you to the world, maybe it would make you vulnerable, or you feel a state of vulnerability if the real you inside was presented to the world. So that's personality versus individuality. There is a difference there. Of course, it's up to everyone to define it themselves, but this was the definition that I presented and was told that that's correct. So, yeah, personality versus individuality. It's very interesting. There's a whole other write up you can read about personas and shadows, and how if you're wearing a mask for a long time, that you form a shadow, right? And that's where all of your frustrations from having to wear the mask go, and eventually the shadow lashes out, and that's like when you'll for example, someone does something that annoys you, but you keep just letting it go and letting it go, but you're not really letting it go. You're storing it. You're stowing it, like in like in some cabinet, right? And eventually, that shadow below you is just so full of frustration from all the repeated occurrences that you lash out, and that's your shadow, right? But there's a whole other thing. You can Google personas and shadows, and you'll learn all about that. But we're not going to cover that here. We're just talking personality versus individuality. Personality, the mask you wear. Individuality, the real you behind the mask. So why is this important? It's important because we're trying to get in touch with a balance between the two, right? Like I said, you're wearing a persona 90% of the time, maybe 100% of the time, and it's not healthy. It's really not healthy to be in a state of wearing a mask all the time. Ideally, we want to reach a balance of 50-50, or maybe even more so individuality, that you're comfortable with your traits, that you are willing to show them to the world. Of course, there's times when you need to wear a mask, like at work. You have to do things to keep your job, stuff like that. But you want to try to get in touch with the person inside of you as much as possible, and not have to wear masks as much, right? And if people don't accept you for who you are, maybe you need to reconsider those friendships, right? Or relationships, even if they're parents or whatever. If they don't accept who you are, there's something wrong there, because they should be accepting the you without having to wear a mask, right? If you have to wear a mask to be accepted by your family, that's not a good sign, and you need to consider not necessarily cutting them off, but limiting your interactions, right? Or controlling your interactions more with them. So, okay, let's move on to the next point, which is direct versus indirect experiences. So indirect might be something like, well, right now you're watching me talk, right? That's an indirect experience. You might be watching this while at the same time you have lots of thoughts running through your mind. So let's just say a good example of a direct versus indirect might be you're cooking dinner, right? And you're just stirring pot of pasta, right? That's kind of like an indirect thing. Indirect. It's hard to define. Indirect might not be the right word.
Sorry, let me just interject this one thing here. The word I'm looking for in this video is autopilot. You're either in direct experience or autopilot.
But it's like you're having an experience where you don't have. It doesn't require your full attention, and so your mind runs wild, right? You'll be thinking of all of these different things and for example, what am I gonna do later tonight? What am I doing tomorrow? What am I doing next week? Like, this is a state of like planning, right? You're thinking of things. Oh, what am I gonna say to these people? They might be upset. And usually that state, right? That state, it's in complete contrast to direct experiences. Direct experiences are experiences where you don't have the ability to have your mind wandering, right? So, for example, you're cutting carrots. My table's not really visible in this, but let's pull it up back a little. You got a carrot here, right? This is a TV remote, but you got a carrot, right? You're cutting your carrot, but it's a direct experience because you need to focus. The second you are thinking, what am I gonna do next week? What's little Jimmy gonna think if I do this? Is the second you cut your finger and you're like, oh, what the heck is wrong with me? And you go to the bathroom and bandage up and stuff. I'm talking about direct experiences, and direct experiences is not necessarily what we're trying to reach either. We're trying to reach a middle ground between like a planning mode, if you want to call it that, and a direct experience, right? Planning mode, indirect, is kind of what I'm calling it. You can call it whatever you want. It's basically, it's a state in which your mind is running wild, right? It's like, okay, for example, when you first start driving a car, it's a very direct experience. You're gripping the steering wheel tight, right? And you're focused on everything. You're like watching all the cars, especially on a highway, right? You're like, oh my God, right? But then after you've become a competent driver, it's more of a indirect or planning type experience, right? Where your mind is not 100% on the road. Even if, I know obviously we all know that you're supposed to be safe drivers, so that's not what I'm trying to get at. What I'm trying to say is your mind wanders, right? So you might be like, oh, the sky's blue today, and oh, I like this song, and what am I gonna do for dinner when I get home? And that's a different state of mind, right? That's that indirect / planning type. Okay, so for indirect versus direct experiences, we're not necessarily looking to be in a state here or a state there all the time. You can never be in 100% direct because you need to plan for your future, but you can't always be in indirect either, right? Because you need to be living in the moment a lot of times, right? So the whole point of this is the ability for us to acknowledge that there are two states of being and try to be able to control ourselves when we're in each state, right? So indirect versus direct. So like, look at me right now. Look at me just for 30 seconds, okay? Look at me here. Look at my house. What do you see? What do you look at? What do you see? What do you see? Look at me specifically. What do you see? What do you see on me? Do you see the color of my shirt? What about my hoodie here? What do you see? Just think about it. Think about it for just a moment. Okay, so hopefully you did that. The whole point was, while you were looking at me and focusing on, maybe is he talking about his green hoodie, or is he talking about the fact that there's a hole somewhere? I can't point at it because this camera is reversed. Whatever, you get it. There's a hole in the hoodie. No, I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking about is the fact that while you're focused, your attention is 100% focused. And were you having thoughts about other things during that time, or were you only thinking about what's he talking about? Is there something specific he's wearing? No, there's nothing specific I'm wearing. It's the state of focus, right? Which is that direct experience. So the whole point is to acknowledge that there are two different types of experiences, and that we need to be able to step back, acknowledge both of them, and try to control which one we're in, right? And if you're able to step back from these experiences and, acknowledge them, right, that you have a better chance of controlling your feelings and emotions. So this is all coming together with the breathing techniques, which we're going to get into. For the first lesson, right, which is what we're doing today, is just a really simple breathing technique, right? That's how should I put it? Well, what you're trying to do with this breathing technique, and with all breathing techniques, is tap into our parasympathetic nervous system. That is your nervous system that controls relaxation, digestion, and stuff like that. We don't want to tap into our sympathetic nervous system. Our sympathetic nervous system is the nervous system that controls like fight or flight, right? People who are having like anxiety attacks. I'm sorry about this squeaky chair. People who are having like anxiety attacks, they're tapping into their sympathetic nervous system. And so they're, have you ever seen someone with an anxiety attack and they're like, if they go to the hospital, they're given like a paper bag to breathe into. And the whole point of that is to slow down their breathing, right? To control their breathing, to bring it back down to like a reasonable, controlled manner, right? Because the sympathetic nervous system is fight or flight, and people have bad reactions in it. Fight or flight tenses up all your muscles. If you're someone who is really susceptible to fight or flight, here's some stuff like you might notice. If you're really susceptible to like your sympathetic nervous system always kicking in, you might find that like for job interviews, you might right before the job interview, you might be getting like butterflies in the stomach, or you might get the runs, like you get the poops, or you might feel sick, or you might those are the most common things, right? Like stuff to do with fight or flight. It has to do with your system gets into combat mode. All your muscles are tensed up, not like this, like I'm doing right now, but like they just tense just a little, right? And to go back to why I'm taking this, my pelvic floor is always in a state of tension, right? And that's causing me a lot of pain. So that's why I'm taking these classes, right? And it has helped a little bit. I'm still not quite there though. But point being, your muscles tense when you're in fight or flight mode, and that's not what you want when you're trying to reach a state of relaxation. And remember, mindfulness and relaxation are not the same thing. Mindfulness is the state of acknowledging that there are two states of being, right? There's direct and indirect, and being able to tap into either, or being mindful of what sympathetic nervous system you're tapping into, right? So no buzzwords. We're not trying to zen or balance or touching any of those buzzwords. There's lots of buzzwords like we need to zen out and stuff like that. That doesn't mean anything, right? It's like, okay, let's reach a state of balance. What does that mean? Could you define balance? What does that mean for my life. There's so many things going on in my life, like work, paying bills, friends, family, maintaining relationship with the wife, feeding the cat, etc., etc., driving my car, putting gas in my car, all these things going on. How could you possibly balance, right? So it's not. There's no such thing. It's just buzzwords. The whole point is to be able to. Mindfulness really is being able to acknowledge that some stuff you can control, some stuff you can't control. There's direct and indirect experiences, and which sympathetic nervous systems you want to tap into. Of course, things will evolve as we go through the classes. So, yeah, let's just jump into the breathing technique now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you it once, and then I'm going to include maybe a 5-minute clip. Yeah, 5 minutes. Really, you're supposed to do it for probably 5 to 10 minutes of doing this to try to reach a state of relaxation, right? Now we're trying to relax. This is part of mindfulness, but it is not mindfulness in itself, right? So the whole idea is this. No cheating. First of all, no cheating. Breathe only with your nose, right? And the whole idea is breathe in for 4 seconds. Hold it for 2. Breathe out for 6. Hold for 2. Breathe back in for 4. Hold, 2, out. So in, hold, out, hold, in, hold, out, hold. Right? When you go in, 4 seconds, hold it for 2, release for 6. Always release longer. Your breath should always be releasing longer than inhaling. Remember what I said about people having anxiety attacks or panic attacks. Their breath is like this. It's like, right? They're having anxiety, right? When we were young, or when I was young, I was taught that taking deep breaths in is relaxing, right? Like when you're feeling stressed, it's like, okay, just breathe, just right? That's what I was taught, at least, and I'm sure a lot of people were taught that, at least in the West. But that's actually incorrect. The correct way to breathe is the exact opposite of that. It's longer exhales, shorter inhales. Deep inhales, right, leads you to be more stressed. No, I'm not joking. So let's try now. Breathe in only with your nose for 4 seconds, right? So it's like, then you hold it for 2, then breathe out. Hold for 2, no breathing in. And let your body naturally start to pull back air in through your nose, right? So hold for 2. And push out all that air. Obviously, it's a little hard for me to demonstrate and speak at the same time, but you kind of get the point. I'm going to include a clip here that's going to be like a demonstration, or not a demonstration. It's literally going to be just breaths in and out, and the whole point is for you to do your best to mimic what this is doing. Okay? So it's going to be very calm, relaxing. The whole idea is focus on your breaths. 100% focus on your breaths. Especially those holds. Those 2-second holds are where you're going to find mindfulness and relaxation, where there's nothing in the brain. Nothing No wild thoughts running through your brain. That's where you're going to achieve it, is in controlling your breath. The whole point of this, and you're not going to be able to do this right away, is to achieve a point where you only are taking 6 breaths per minute. Okay? Not easy. Not easy. If you think about how many breaths we take right now, probably like 15 a minute, right? I'm only guessing. I wish there was some way I could have a device that could monitor my breath, right? But there really isn't, at least not that I know of. So, again, we're trying to achieve 6 breaths per minute. That's going to bring you into a state of relaxation, which is what you want. It'll relax all your muscles and just help you try to reach a state of mindfulness, right? Which, again, is not some perfect balance or anything. It's the ability to step back from situations, acknowledge the situation, and deal with situations, right? It is not some, zenning out buzzword. So again, 4 seconds in, hold, 6 seconds out. Hold, 4 seconds in, hold for 2 seconds, 6 seconds out, hold, and repeat. Now I'll insert the clip. Please try it. Okay, so we're back from the breathing little practice we did there. Hopefully you did it. Hopefully you tried at least, right? Now that we've done that, that's basically the end of the first lesson. The first lesson is just learning what mindfulness is, what direct and indirect experiences are, the difference between wearing a mask and the real you, and being able to acknowledge all that, right? So that's sort of it for the first lesson. There are 2 more lessons to be learned at this point. That's what I have for you, but we may have 3 more still, so we might have 6 in total. I have 3 for you right now. So if you really want to get the full experience, you should practice this, what you've learned in this video, for a week. Practice it for a whole week, then watch my second video. You can cheat and just go straight to the second video if you want, but to get the most out of it, you probably should practice what I've told you, being able to step back from situations, acknowledge them as direct or indirect, etc., for a week. Because if you just jump into the next class, it might be too much to handle all at once. Because we're trying to layer things on top of each other, while at the same time, if this stuff doesn't work for you, after, let's just say 3 days, then maybe you want to just jump into the next lesson. Because like I said, there's different breathing techniques in each lesson, and not every breathing technique will work for every person. So that's all for now. Thanks for watching. This is Kenny G signing out.